Well, I'm Bob Bakert with Jazz
Okay.
Guitar today, and we are here with Mike Stern, and we appreciate his time today, and we're just going to have a little chat on what Mike's up to, as the magazine says, today. So what are you doing these days, man? What's going on with you?
Practicing a lot, of course, but I'm also teaching a lot on Zoom. I teach like Monday through Friday quite a bit of students on Zoom, which is great. And it's also difficult because I prefer, of course, live, you know, where you can play with the students. But it's cool. I mean, it's good. It's good. It keeps me off the streets.
Well, I'm glad you're off the streets, because we talked about that in hubcaps and shit like that last time we talked.
That's right, hubcaps.
So I remember that pretty well, and actually
hubcaps.
I've been waiting for my '62 Buick hubcaps you promised me, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Every day I look, and
They're coming. They're coming.
I think it's great that you're teaching like that. We're just gonna kind of wing it here and just talk about what you're up to. So if somebody wants to study with you, how do they make that happen?
Oh, it's you know, I've got plenty of students. I almost pretty maxed out, but I'll probably be doing it through February. I usually put up this schedule. It's with the Collective. It's with the school in New York. They used to be the Drummers Collective, and I knew a guy there, really great cat, who kind of helped me out when I wanted to come off the road a little bit after the beginning of last year, you know, January, or this year. I mean, this year, the beginning of this year in January, I wanted to come off the road because I had been on the road 2019 a lot. Right. So I kind of wanted to chill and do a little bit more teaching, and I started going to this place, the Collective. It used to be the Drummers Collective, as I said, and it was a very you know, now it's just all instruments. And very cool. I got there and just taught some students, you know, and then when the virus hit and all this stuff happened, I just started doing it online. So they hook me up and schedule everything, and I just send a schedule to the Collective, and people can go usually on my website and find a link to go to the Collective and sign up. So it's cool. It's been good. I like teaching anyway. I've always kind of done it off and on, but I'm more of a, you know, I like to play, but it's been cool. It's been cool. And I kind of want to do a bit more of that. I certainly want to play live and go on the road some, but not as much as I've been doing over the years. You know, it's starting to kick the travel's starting to kick my ass. But as much as I love to play, it's just.
I've never heard anybody say that before. The travel's starting to kick my ass. Well,
yeah.
If I had a nickel for every time someone said that to me, I'd have a pile full.
Yeah, exactly. It's
true.
true.
What did somebody say? I play for free. You pay me to travel.
Right. That's basically what it comes down to. No, the music's always fun, you know.
So let's talk about the teaching thing for a few minutes, if you don't mind.
No.
So somebody shows up, you know, I'm assuming it's all Zoom type stuff like what we're doing today.
Occasionally, yeah, it's 99.9% on Zoom. Yeah.
So do you take people at all levels, or is it, you know, do you take what comes, or are they?
It's pretty much what comes, but pretty much people are pretty advanced, you know. Yeah. So I can kind of, it's been easy to teach. A few that are kind of having some trouble getting past a certain point, but I like, it's a challenge to teach different levels, you know, and fun. And if anybody loves to play, I'm behind them 100%, no matter what, you know, because it's been so, for me, it's been like a lifesaver, you know, to be able to play the guitar, even after this injury, which really upset me. I'm fighting to keep going, you know. I ain't gonna stop either. So I found a way to turn this thing around.
We talked about your injury last time, but why don't you just kind of let people know what you're talking about? Just for
I fell on some construction. I wasn't supposed to be there in New York, you know, and very disguised, and I kind of was walking across the street pretty fast with my wife, and she managed to miss this thing, and I tripped on it. And as I was kind of falling, because I tripped, I was moving faster to try to catch my body, you know, so I hit pretty hard and broke both these bones up here, not the shoulder, but the bones underneath, the humerus bones. And that was, of course, a drag. And worse is that I got this nerve damage in my right hand. So I wasn't able to really, had to have a couple surgeries, a few surgeries, and to kind of get my hand so I could do a pinch, so I could hold the pick, and a couple more surgeries just to reinforce that. And so that was pretty strong, but I still couldn't quite do it. So I have to use glue.
We talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's quite a challenge, to say the least. But so I have to glue the pick. You see this, it's kind of glued. So yeah, my hand is like, I can't do any more than that. That's as high as I can get it. So I can't play with my fingers anymore. That really sucks. And but I can still play. Most of the stuff that I always did was with a pick. So
yeah, you doing
I
fine?
can still navigate.
I heard you ripping off some licks as we were coming on, and it didn't sound. It sounded like you.
Yeah. I mean, I could.
I wish there was a way we could show people you doing that. Can you
angle this?
Yeah, can you or put your foot up on the stool or something like that? Look at that. There he is. There he is.
Pat Martino?
Of course.
See, that's a guy that really, inspires me, because he keeps going no matter what.
So just to give people context of that, what key were you thinking of when you were playing all that?
Good question. No, B flat kind of.
All right.
Kind of in F, for F7 kind of. Sometimes I'll play over sometimes when I'm jamming over or thinking just a key center, sometimes I'll go to the 5/7 and play stuff over the 5/7, because there's so much stuff you can do over a dominant 7. So many, you can play altered scales, you can play whole tone scales, and then resolve it to the key that the bass player is jamming on a B flat or something like that, and you can kind of.
It's funny you say that, because before this conversation, that's where I spend most of my time practicing, on the 5 chord, because if I think of tension release, and tension is the 5 chord, so if I can screw with the 5 chord, then I release it to the
exactly. Exactly, and there's of course there's a lot of other substitutions for the 5 chord, or you can use other, like terrain. I mean, basically, if he was in B flat, maybe he would go between B flat, G flat major, down in major thirds was kind of one of his key kind of concepts. And they got it, I think, from the Slonimsky book, Thesaurus of Scales and Melodic Patterns, Nicholas Slonimsky. And I think he kind of found this one chapter that really got him. From what I heard of a guitar, I don't know, this is all, I'm just hearing bits and pieces, putting kind of,
that's fine,
more or less putting it together. But I think it was Dennis Sandoli, a guitar player from Philly, that hipped him to all that stuff. And then he got into it and thought, wow, that's cool. And then he made music out of it, which is really, when you look at what that chapter is about, and this kind of scale.
Let's see your guitar again.
That kind of scale is pretty weird sounding. I love it, but it's a symmetrical, I guess I've heard it called a symmetrical augmented scale. From B, if you want, it's from B to D, D flat to G flat, G to B flat. It's like an upper minor, third, and then a half step. Upper minor, third, and half step. It's just a 6-note scale.
Right.
It's a hexatonic scale, a 6-note scale, and it's just comprised of these two triads, I guess. B flat augmented, and B augmented in this key, and that was the Giant Steps key. So, and it also in there's the B, which is maybe the key center for a second with giant steps, and then there's a G triad, and then there's an E flat triad.
Right.
That's down major third. The tonality is down major third,
Right.
and that's what giant steps is basically. And then Train put a 5/7 before each key change.
Right.
So in other words, he's going to G from B major 7, which is down a major third, but he puts a D7 before it.
Right.
And then another B flat 7 to get to the next key change, and then back to F sharp 7 to go to B. Pretty amazing though that he would somehow be able to write something so melodic, you know.
Now we got to look at your eyes a little bit. You're going to have to move the camera back.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Cameraman,
Yeah,
jump in here.
So it's pretty amazing that he was able to make such cool music out of it, you know, and write giant steps among other things with that, with those kind of changes. That was his kind of, I guess, his kind of harmonic discovery in some ways, using that reharmonization. So that basically you can, of course, you can just use a 5/7 and kind of resolve to a key center if you want. But you can also use different key centers like Train did and put a 5/7 before that. So you're playing in B flat, then you're playing in G flat, then you're playing in D if you're doing those major thirds apart, and putting 5/7s before that. So you can really go out in a very kind of interesting and kind of logical way. You know?
Right.
I mean, you could go out no matter what. You can play whatever the hell you want that just sounds wrong, and then make it right.
As long as you bring it home, you can go.
Yeah, as long as you bring it home, you don't want to stay out there.
Right. Yeah, you got to bring it home. That's
Otherwise, you know, get the Thorazine.
Yeah, the people will go, what? Huh? Angst.
Exactly. Such is life. So it's a kind of cool thing to do. It depends on how you do that tension release, like you said, and harmonically, and so yeah, there are lots of cool options.
So let me ask you, this is great. We just got a giant steps lesson from Mike Stern. That's pretty cool. That's worth.
Well, whatever I know.
I love it. No, it's great. So let me ask you a question. So if you have a student, let's say you've got an advanced student, all right, what are the things that you want to make sure that he knows, or she knows, excuse me, I shouldn't be, you know, what are the things, like you say, you know, you're really, you know, for me to feel like you understand what it is I want you to learn from me, you need to have this concept together and that concept together.
I mean, I would say the most important, you know, what makes it easier is somebody can read okay. And they don't have to read great, but they can read okay, because then, especially without being able to play too much together, you kind of need somebody to be able to read, so you can work a little out of books. And I'll suggest a couple of things, like some Bach or some, which I love, some Bach stuff, or sometimes some other books from different people, Mick Goodrick, or Jerry Bergonzi is a great saxophone player.
Is there a particular Bach piece that's a good one for them to start on, or is it?
Well, yeah, but I usually say, you know, the sonatas and partitas for the violin, because they're single notes,
right?
And they kind of imply a lot of chords. Violin is not known for playing too many chords, but with through the single notes, and some of these pieces anyway, through the single notes, you can really hear a lot of harmony, you know, and some double stops they use and stuff, or triads he uses, but not but most of the harmony is through, you know, through the just the melody, you know, and they implied through the melody.
So when you say read, let's drill that down a little bit, unpack that, as some people like to say. Are you're talking about identifying the notes and being able to play them on the guitar, not necessarily clusters or even the rhythm. A lot of times this is what I'm trying to get this from you. Are you looking to make sure that they hear the notes versus, you know, against the harmony? Is that the most important thing, or do you
usually that's it. Just read enough so I can get, you know, maybe they can take, sometimes even if they read just tab, I have a couple of students like that, and if I got a book that's got tab, and some of the Joe Pass books that sometimes teach from. He was very inside bebop, you know,
Right.
and very kind of correct bebop in a certain way, and just really kind of not a lot of outside stuff, a little bit, but basically it was pretty inside, but amazing, you know, the way he did it, and especially, I mean, amazing the way his book seemed very, very clear and
Right.
simple. And so, you know, I mean, in that, you know, guys like Jim Hall are probably my favorite. He's so creative in some way, so extra creative.
Right.
Not that Joe Pass wasn't creative in his own way, amazing.
Right.
And but Jim had that extra thing from. I think he just taught or learned a lot of composition stuff, right, and applied that to his playing a lot, and pretty advanced composition stuff. And of course Wes Montgomery, who couldn't even read,
Right.
but played his ass off. He read a little from what I heard, but not much, and he could just hear it all. You know, it was.
That's what blows me. We talked about that, but that's what blows me away about him is when you know, everybody else that I listen to, you know, of the, you know, the standard people, with the exception of Hall maybe, but Montgomery is one of these guys that just, I don't know where, I mean, he does, everybody else, you kind of understand the guitar lore. You understand where he's coming from, being guitar player. Oh yeah, he's doing this, he's doing that's a progression from here to there. But he thought, he just heard it. I guess he was listening to the horn and trumpet players a lot and was playing trumpet.
Totally, and he found it on the guitar and
yeah,
chords.
And he found it on the guitar and made it happen.
And all the chords too. I guess also probably people showed him certain chord forms, and then maybe from there he found some inversions, whatever he needed. But whatever the hell he came up with was a lot of music. You know, Dennis Chambers is somebody, amazing drummer. He doesn't read a lick. Yeah. It's all, I mean, he plays some seriously, you know, especially with John McLaughlin. I mean, all that stuff was Weird Times and great stuff, you know, and Dennis used to play it just by learning it all by memory and just by listening, you know. So, I mean, ultimately, that's the way you learn music anyway. It's like learning a language. You can learn a certain amount in school, and that'll help things along. But at the end of the day, it's by trial and error, you know, playing a lot, and by listening to people that are really fluent in the language. If you go back to the analogy of a language, if somebody, you go to France, you'll learn, you may study French a little bit at a French school, you know, in the States or something. You go to France, you really learn it, you know, all of a sudden it's in your face, and it's also, you know, there's different ways of approaching it. So any language. So that's when you really learn it. You put, you know, just listening, you know, ultimately. And I'm sorry, and listening and trying it, you know, and fumbling or making tons of mistakes and embarrassing yourself, you know, trying to learn French.
What are you talking about? I never made.
Right, exactly. So I mean, you know, that's with the language, and of course it's with this language. You know, you make a ton of mistakes, or you figure out the first chord by the time the rest of the band is done, because they're better than you. But that's the thing to do, is to try to get with cats that are better. You know, not amazingly better, but somewhat better, so you can start hearing how people put this stuff together.
What's interesting is we don't walk around saying, okay, instead of, you know, the dog does this, blah, blah, you know, when we speak, we don't say, you know, preposition, verb, noun, you know, we just speak. You know?
Right.
We don't
when you're fluent in a language, it just comes out.
You just think and you just do, and, you know, listen, play here. And then if you need to explain it to somebody, you know, on a technical level, you know, then you have all of that to lean back on and say, okay, this is the that and the that, you know.
Right. Exactly.
Actually making music. You know, I mean, forget all, who said it? Forget all that shit and play. You know, I mean.
Yeah, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you concentrate on, especially with improvised music. You know, with you know, instrumental kind of you know, a lot of improvisation. Right. You got to listen to the other conversation going around. You know, because there's sometimes a lot of action between the drummer and the soloist, for instance, and of course you want to hear what the bass player is doing. So. And maybe he's playing some other notes that you want to go for, and so you got to put your attention on that. And hopefully you get to a certain point with the language where you can, where that becomes a certain amount of it becomes second nature, which takes some time. It's just like you don't realize it when you're speaking in a language that you know, because you were doing it when you were a little kid and picking it up from mommy and daddy, you know what I mean? And very early on for years. And the same kind of thing when you're learning an instrument and trying to play a certain kind of language. Some languages are maybe initially more more intricate, like jazz is maybe for me was a little bit more intricate than rock, you know, although there's plenty of jazz players that can't get that feeling for rock. So it's all kind of equally difficult in certain ways.
I find metal to be a real bitch.
Excuse me?
I find metal to be a real bitch.
Yeah. that's a hard one. You gotta have big earphones if you want to do that.
I find that to be very, very challenging.
For more than a few years.
You played with so many unbelievable freaking players out there. Is there anybody that you haven't played with that you go, man, I really would like to play with that guy?
Well, I played with a lot of them just a little bit. You know, I'd like to do more ever, you know, who knows if that'll ever be a possibility, but I'd love to do something with Herbie Hancock more, you know, somebody like that. I mean, he's such a genius. He could learn so much from, and it would be amazing. Or Chick Corea. I was supposed to do something with Chick, this last record, when I did this record, which is ultimately called Trip. It was going to be called something else, and then I had this injury. And he was supposed to play, and Dave Weckl and John Patitucci, actually, and I've written like a rhythm changes tune. They were supposed to play on a couple more. Right. And it was all set up, and then I had this injury, and then I had to go to plan B, you know, which I did the record kind of named Trip, because that's how I got this horrible. I figured, you know, I may as well kind of get a weird sense of humor about it and keep rolling. And also, I said something about staying with it, you know, like kind of if you get, you know, depressed, or if you have an injury, or all of the above, you know, you got to keep going, you know. I said something on the liner notes, and that was kind of the whole idea of that record. And the main idea was the music. I had written a lot of it before I got this injury, but then I couldn't go out to LA and record with Chick, which I wanted to do. I always try to do everything live when I'm in the studio, like with live musicians. Then if you want to fix some stuff, that's what a studio's for, that's fine. But I like the initial, and hopefully most of it, you just leave, you know, or all of it, because that's that you get that kind of instant communication between the musicians that you can't get one at a time. Yeah, you know what I mean?
I almost never listen to studio recordings. If I'm going to listen to somebody, I look for the live recording all the time, or somebody that's recorded live in the studio.
Right, and the thing is, I like studio recordings. I like the way people kind of, as long as the basic, you know, the initial foundation is kind of guys in the studio playing at the same time, and you can feel that.
Right. Now, if they play in the studio at the same time,
yeah,
I'm all about that. It's great. I don't want to hear. You can tell. There's
it's hard. It's really hard to.
I can't listen to it because I know it's been manufactured and I don't like it. I want to.
Well, it's or you know, some of it is cool. Some of it people do a great job with, and it's a certain kind of music you don't need that much interaction. But for me, I like the drummer to do something, and I'll play something off of that, or vice versa, and in a minute, you know. I'm profoundly
in the Stern school.
Yeah, I like that personally. Yeah.
You said something earlier, which I was going to highlight a little bit. You're talking about listening to the bass player, listening to the drummer, and reinforcing the idea that for people who are getting into jazz, we have a lot of those people that, you know, that watch our magazine, you know, to reinforce this idea that's a conversation.
Yeah, that's the thing. For at least for this kind of music, there's certain kind of jazz that's almost more coming from a kind of a pop, you know, idea, kind of a concept, and that's okay. Some people do a great job with that. Some of it is not my favorite, but but I gotta respect the you know, some people do a great job, and some of it is really done well, just so well just sounds great no matter how they did it. You know what I mean? And it's cool music and whatever. But I certainly am I like to, especially with the drums, I like to have that happening live, because there's so much interaction between.
Yeah,
especially when you're trying to build a solo, and
yeah.
you can't just do that when the drummer is guessing what you might do. It's not impossible.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. I've done it occasionally with a cat that knows my playing, where something happened technically and we had to do something over. It's not impossible, but it's a stretch, and it's just so much more natural for me to have everybody in the studio. So that's what I always go for.
So let's talk about your sound a little bit. You definitely have a sound. I mean, it's you playing, which is one of the great hallmarks of a great player. You knew Miles was playing 2 or 3 notes. It's you 2 or 3 notes. It's Wes and 2 or 3 notes. And you're one of those guys. I mean, you can identify you playing immediately. What is your current signal chain? Has it changed over the years? We talked about this a little bit, but you're still using your Yamaha guitar.
Yeah, I'm still using that. They came to me and wanted to, I was using a Telly style guitar, kind of a mutt for years. That was actually, I used to have Roy Buchanan's old guitar. I got it from Danny Gatton. I used to live in DC, and Danny had it. And he had one of Roy's spares, and then he needed to buy a used car or something, so he sold it to me for $500. This thing would have been worth a fortune today. And somebody ripped me off, just pulled a gun on me in Boston. I was coming back from a rehearsal, and some cat said, he had a gun in a bag, and I wasn't going to argue whether or not it, was real, or I mean, whether or not he had bullets and he was serious. I just said, you got it, But what a fucking nightmare. I mean, I begged him, no, don't take that. Anything else? Here's my shoes. Here's my But I had to give that up. So and that was a great guitar. So this other guy, Michael Aronson, was a luthier and a club owner actually in Boston, and had a place called Michael's, which a lot of Berkeley students used to play at. A lot of cats in Boston used to play at. It's been closed for years. And he saw me play that guitar a lot, so he made something similar. It was heavier, but it seemed similar, and the sound was not that good because that guitar was amazing. But he made a good Telly kind of a mutt kind of thing. Then Yamaha, when they said they wanted to make a signature guitar for me, I went, of course, And but I wasn't sure if it would sound good, and they got that guitar, that copy of the original Telly that Roy Buchanan guitar, the copy of that guitar. They got that and kind of made, I loaned them that for a while, and they made a copy of that. And it sounds, with their own tweaks, and they do a great job. They're good wood and all that stuff. I don't know that much about it, but I've asked a bunch of luthiers that really know this stuff, and they say that their stuff is really, really well made. Anyway, what they sent me was really good. They sent me a bunch of prototypes, and one just sounded good. So I just been playing that ever since. And I also use this kind of, it's a harmonizer patch on this old thing called the SPX90.
I know that.
And it's kind of to give it, and I use stereo 2 amps to give it kind of a more vocal sound, Right. Sometimes I'll just do direct through 1 amp, but by and large, I like that sound. I like the kind of more vocal sound. So it kind of takes a little edge off the Telly, because Telly has a lot of edge sometimes. This one is particularly warm that I use, but it still has more edge than a hollow body, And I like to do stuff that has some, blues kind of sound and rock stuff sometimes, combined with, in a set, combined with some straight ahead,
Yeah.
So straight ahead jazz kind of. So I like that combination. So this kind of guitar really fits. I tried a ES-175 for a little while, and it just, it was feeding back and not really didn't have that kind of enough of that edge when I wanted that edge. Right. But at the same time, I needed to soften this edge, because for stuff that I wanted to be more legato or vocal. And I play that way anyway. So most people say it's not a big difference, but they can hear this effect some, but it's not, to me, it sounds good. So I just, whatever works, Sko uses a little distortion most of the time. Pat uses something, and Matheny uses something like direct and some effects, you know, and you know, so whatever works for you.
Now,
To me, as long as you can play your heart out, as long as it inspires you or
do you have
doesn't get
an
in the way.
do you use an overdrive pedal?
Yeah, I certainly do.
Which
I
one
do
do you
that
use?
one. I'm looking at it now, Super Overdrive. I use all Roland pedals.
Oh yeah, okay, sure.
So I'm using that for now. I was using one of those DS1 for a long time, those, but I kind of prefer this, at least for now. So sometimes I change it up. And I've also been using this blues driver sometimes, even when I'm playing straight, you know, softer, more clean sound. It just gives it a little bit more.
Yeah, a lot of guys just turn it on, leave it on. It just takes,
Yeah.
gives it
Exactly. It kind of gives it a little boost and also warms it up a little bit. So
yeah.
that's kind of what I'm looking for. Basically, is a warmer sound. I like that vibe.
So are you using 2 amps most of the time?
Yeah, just about always. I like that.
You don't mind me asking what amps are you using these days?
Different ones. I rent, you know, Blackface Twins, twin reverbs, because when I'm on the road, they're easier to find. And I'm just used to them. But Roland has been sending me. They sent me a couple of these Blues Cube amps. These they have those. Some have 112 in them. They sent me 2 amps because they know I like 212s. So they sent me 2, and they sound really good. So on Trip, on that record, I used Roland amps the whole time. Those Blues Cube amps, and they sound something about them. I liked the other Roland. The one that was very popular, the Roland Chorus. I never used the chorus with that very much because I prefer this kind of harmonizer patch that I used for that sound. So I didn't like the chorus sound necessarily as much as what I use. But sometimes I would use those amps, those JC120s. They're very clean in some ways, but almost not enough low mids, not warm enough. So especially with the guitar that I use. So when they sent me these amps, I was really pleasantly surprised.
There's a lot of people that are glad to hear you talk about your signal chain. Because you know, people want to know what are people using, and a lot of times people don't want to talk about that very much, and because you know. But I really appreciate you taking the time to answer that question for us.
Yeah, I think it's cool. They try different stuff, or some people use different stuff for certain tunes. I'm not as fancy as that. I usually kind of, the only thing I might change is one pedal, that distortion pedal, when I'm rocking more, you know. But I like the, you know, a lot of kind of dynamics in a solo sometimes, depending on how long, you know, maybe just a ballad, and then it's going to be just that kind of feeling. But if it's the possibility of a kind of exciting tune and it can start off real soft and build, I love doing that or trying to do that with the drummer. So the sound is really important to me, and what kind of works without getting too fancy. Some people have pedal boards that, you know, you got to rent the plane practically to get, but yeah, I mean, it's great. Whatever works. I mean, Eric Johnson has a really big pedal board, and he uses specific stuff, but he gets his sound that turns him on, you know.
Yeah,
so whatever.
Yeah, he'll play within 2 measures. You know, he'll have hit 2 or 3 different pedals. Like he'll play a pedal for a beat, and then
Sometimes he's done that.
Yeah. I talked about it.
He's a badass, though.
Yeah, I talked to him about that one time. He said, "Yeah, there's not too many people as, you know, something like as sick as me, you know." And I'll tell you.
Yeah, no, he's so into it, though. He's so into sound.
And it's his thing, you know.
It's his thing, and it's beautiful, you know, for somebody. I know drummers like that. Weckel is one of them. He really is very specific about the equipment he uses or rents if he has to rent it. Because we used to take, when I was playing with Dave and Jeff Andrews, we had a trio for maybe like close to 4 years off and on, right? And we used to take all the equipment on the road. We used to be able to take like the whole kit and caboodle, like his total drum kit, Jeff Andrews' cabinet, Hartke 410-inch cabinet, and top, and both my amps, like twin reverb type amps at that point. Or maybe I was using one of those old Yamaha amps that they don't make anymore that I really liked, and something else. And we used to be able to take that on the road and pay a Skycap like $50 and get it all on the plane, like 25 pieces sometimes, and pay $50. Nowadays, you would have to buy the plane or a fleet of cargo jets. You know, I don't know what you'd have to. It's ridiculous nowadays.
What's the most fun Mike Stern can have playing music? I mean, what scenario? I mean, is it a trio, quartet, large group, small group, playing at home, on the sidewalk, busking in New Orleans? What is just like, yeah, man, I'm dropping everything to play that gig?
Well, you know, it's hard to say. It's hard to say because they all have pluses and minuses.
I know, but just try.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I hope stays open is the 55 bar, because that's just fun to play. There's no pressure. It's just fun. It's a small club in New York City, and I play there. I've been playing there for years, Mondays and Wednesdays when I was at home, you know, which was, I was on the road a lot, but every time I'd be home, I'd be playing there. So that's a ball, you know, and a lot of times it was with really great players, you know, over the years, just really. And so I've been really, really happy about that. But, and that's a fun place to play. You know, you're on the road, a festival can be great, but my favorite is probably more like clubs and, things where you can kind of feel the audience, and the audience can really get the feeling for the intricacy of what you're when you're playing, you know what I mean, as well as the more stuff that hits you kind of in a more obvious way, you know.
Sure.
But that's what I like. I love that, and I just love to play anyway, you know. And I think mostly, I mean, one of the more like when I just had a ball playing was when you know, I love to play original stuff and all that stuff, but with the 4 Generations of Miles, which was originally, it was a record with Ron Carter and George Coleman and Jimmy Cobb and myself, and just different cats that have played with Miles Davis at different times, right? A record that was kind of, you know, the idea, the creative idea of putting that together was by a record company, Chesky Records, David Chesky, you know. It's a small jazz label, really cool stuff they've done over the years. And so he had that idea, and so we did a record, and then it evolved. It was Buster Williams was on bass, and Sonny Fortune played saxophone, and Jimmy Cobb played drums. And we did some gigs, as many as we could, which wasn't that many, but boy, I used to love to play that band, because we would just play tunes with those guys, you know, standing there. I mean, it was so much fun to play, soft, swinging like crazy. So it was just, I mean, it was swinging like crazy. So that was really a ball. I love that. I hope we get to do it in some way now, because Jimmy died and Fortune died. So, you know, that's really tragic. But I mean, we knew Jimmy was up there. Sonny was more of a shock. You know, he died. He wasn't young, but we thought he'd be around for another 20 years or something. But anyway, stuff happens.
You know, people should know that there's a lot of YouTube of you at the 55 bar.
Yeah.
People want to see what you're talking about. You can YouTube Stern at the 55 bar, and there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, some of it sucks and some of it's great, I'm sure. Like,
that's what's cool about it.
Yeah, that's what's cool. And so, some of it is like, you know, some of it is just got a good vibe, and so you never know. But that's the nature of YouTube. But I like to just, you know, I know sometimes people are filming everything, you know, but I'm not gonna stop just saying I'm gonna try some shit. I don't care. You know, you gotta go for it, you know, and experiment on every gig. And not totally, but I had a great teacher one time who said, just try one thing every gig. You don't want to just, you know, you're playing to an audience and you don't want to think about new stuff consciously. You want to concentrate on who you're playing with, on the dynamics, on the basic idea. You're building a solo or whatever. But you can also try one thing on every gig. So, but at the 55 bar, I may have tried more than one thing in every gig. You know, it's like, that was a great place to do it. So that, you know, it's cool. But the main thing is you try to make that sound fresh too. I mean, James Brown was like, I had this great teacher, a heavy duty teacher named John LaPorta, who used to say James Brown was an amazing improviser. And I thought, well, he does the same thing. He said, no, every night he did the same thing and made it sound like the first time he ever did it. You know, he had that energy. That's the goal. You know, that's really the goal, is to try to eat, no matter what you got on a certain night. If you're trying new stuff and it seems like it's working, if you're not trying anything and you're playing some stuff, you know, try to make it fresh. You know, there's all kinds of ways you can put it in the time, in different ways. You can play the dynamics differently. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. And just the energy's got to be there. It can't be like, oh boy, here's a predictable, this is going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
Right at the same time, even if it's a similar lick, there's a way to make it sound fresh, or to put the energy behind it like you dig it. You know, you're having fun doing it.
That might be a great place for us to conclude this, because it's hard to beat James Brown. You know?
Yeah, that's true. Damn true.
I mean, you know, it all kind of, you know, if you want to think about what's cool, it's hard, you know, it's like Miles, James, you know. You know, I mean, there's a couple of guys out there that just defy the category and reconnect us to the world, if you will. And is there anything you want to say before we conclude this? Anything you want to?
No matter what level you're on, you know, if you play guitar, I always try to say this, like, somebody had told me this a long time ago, is that once you kind of get past a certain point and you know you love to play, it's going to be hard to keep going. There's things that get in the way. There's all kinds of, it's amazingly worth it to keep going and to develop, try to always develop your potential as much as you can. It's just amazingly worth it to hang on to, and no one can take it away from you except for you. And one way to keep it is you got to, like, water the flowers every day. You know, you got to do a little bit of practicing every day. Otherwise the flowers are going to wilt, you know? Yeah. So that's basically what I've noticed. And it's something so worth it, right? I mean, to play guitar, there's nothing like it after a certain point. You just get hooked and you never want.
Behind this blue curtain, there's 6 guitars.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
That's, you know, that's a really great way to put it. I can't thank you enough. You're gracious with your time. You're transparent as all hell. You tell us what's going on, and you know, and you got a huge fan base across the world. I mean, you're a down-to-earth guy, considering you're in the top echelon of your craft. You know, so we can't thank you enough for doing this, Mike. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it, bro. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks, Mike.
All right. All the best, man. Stay safe. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
All right, bro.